The anime starts with a young man playing various video games. While playing one, he suddenly gets transported into the game's world, where the character Ato, which he had been controlling, appears to him, surprising him. Ato confirms she is real, and he finds out the game he was playing from his sickbed is a simulation of ruling nations, set in the dark world of Fantaria. Ato was his favorite character, and she starts talking about the king, making him wonder, is he playing the king's role? He thought she meant the leader of Minogura, but Ato clarified she meant King Takto, who achieved many milestones on the nightmare difficulty level. He did this using the civilization, said to be the hardest to control, the Desolation civilization. He was the first player and proudly topped the user rankings. Takto was shocked and wondered how Ato knew this, but she remembered everything, including everything he asked her to do in the game. They had invaded the world many times and lost repeatedly, so there was no need to worry. Takto told her that he copied her playstyle because he wanted to be as strong as her, and he was happy talking to her now. Ato felt the same great feeling. Then Takto looked up at the sky, amazed by its shape. He asked if she had summoned him here, but she hadn't. They quickly realized this wasn't the sky, but that they were in the world of the Eternal Nations, a place unfamiliar to Takto. Ato wondered if this was called a miracle, and she approached, expressing how much she loved the moment they met. She asked if they could start over, but Takto didn't know where they were. Ato thought it might be her world or a completely different one. Then she suggested, like before, that they start fresh together and build a kingdom. Takto was shocked and didn't know what was happening to him, but he agreed to Ato's suggestion to start as they had before. He asked her to build their civilization a kingdom for both of them, making Ato happy. Then she introduced herself as Ato the Protector, a child born from the Guardians destined to destroy the world. She assured him that from that moment on, her mind was under King Takto's command. She asked him to descend to the lowest ranks, and Takto felt excited, telling her their civilization was the most wicked ever. Takto asked, "So, you know what Minogura must do first, right?" Then they decided to retire from the world and close their doors to outsiders. After that, Takto summoned a scouting animal, but they both felt disgusted by its appearance. Takto sensed their Minogura civilization was ancient and ruled by evil and ruin, and they should always remember that before making wrong moves. Ato believed they should be cautious about being discovered by others, which was a strict rule in the early game stages. Then Takto told the scouting insect to launch and explore everything nearby, and Ato warned it that if it disappointed King Takto, it must complete its mission. The insect sped off, but Ato felt uneasy because it resembled a servant carrying out orders. Takto realized he could share the insect's field of vision, just like in the game, but it was costly. He would need 100 magic energy points, and they only had 100 left. Building a settlement to serve as their base would require 20 points. Ato thought the cost was high and warned against wasting too much energy. Takto then suggested creating a warrior to fight for them, but with limited magic energy, that wasn't an option. Ato gratefully promised to fight seriously if necessary. Takto noticed that Ato would grow stronger over time, but her current level was 3, meaning Minogura's situation was quite risky, and any battle could lead to their destruction. Ato urged him to smile a little. Meanwhile, the insect continued exploring, and Takto followed it. Through that, he mapped the surrounding terrain and saw it was forested, but they hadn't encountered any monsters yet. Ato guessed the forest would be a good hiding spot for monsters, but found it strange none had appeared. Since Takto didn't see what he thought might be food sources, he decided to keep exploring for a while. Ato felt she wasn't much help and apologized, but Takto said it didn't matter. He was happy she was by his side. Ato was surprised by his words and moved closer, touched by what he said. Suddenly, a group of dark elves appeared near them. It was a large group. Ato thought they were in a fantasy world, where dark elves are usually neutral but tend toward evil neutrality. So, they felt somewhat reassured. Takto asked Ato if she thought this was the Eternal Nations world because if they found another settlement for their civilization, it would be bad. They considered the consequences of war and hoped to avoid it as much as possible. They saw the need to hide at first. Ato thought neighboring another civilization would be very annoying. She suggested that if it was confirmed, they should flee. Takto agreed since Minogura valued peace and harmony above all, and Ato believed war brought out barbarity in any case. Then Takto decided they would watch the Dark Elves to gather info about the area. If luck wasn't on their side, they'd escape, and Ato agreed. More Dark Elves appeared, surprising everyone. The scene triggered a memory of when they had wandered these elves in the forest, led by their chief, Gia. After being expelled from their lands, they had no place to go, and their children couldn't survive. Gia thought the forest was full of plants, and there must be food. But Emily knew there was a cursed forest nearby, on the edge of the unknown land of Idroja. She recalled sealing something in that land, and believed no thriving life was there. Gia thought that was superstition because the trees grew well and urged her not to give up. He told himself not to give up either because his people awaited him, and he couldn't leave until he met Ato and Takto. Back in the present, Takto seemed to him like a great force of evil, making him deeply afraid for his people and soldiers. He couldn't afford to make any wrong decisions. Gia came forward and knelt before Takto, introducing himself himself as the chief warrior of the Mazaram clan of the elves. Gia apologized to Takto for entering the king's forest without permission. Otto thought it was good that Gia apologized, as he had intruded on their land without permission. She asked him why he did it. Gia told her that his clan used to live in the central lands of Idaragia. As he spoke, he felt relieved that they understood his situation, but she became angry and told him to get straight to the point. Gia told her that they had been driven from their land and had nowhere else to go. He thought to himself that it was wrong to want to sugarcoat the truth. Then, Takto asked Gia if their bodies were frail. Gia was shocked by the question, but replied that the persecution had been very violent. He said they came to this land fleeing injustice because they ran out of food on the way, and were also trying to evade their pursuers. They couldn't get more food and hadn't eaten in a long time. Gia felt they didn't deserve all this trouble, and that the tribulation wasn't their right. All they wanted was to live peacefully in a place of their own. Then Takto offered them apples, which surprised Gia. Takto told them these apples were theirs and asked if he knew their taste. Gia replied that he had never seen them before and that their fruit was strange to him. He thought it was rude to eat in front of him without sharing anything. But the rest of Gia's soldiers ate the apples immediately and loved them. Takto showed them apples of a different color, and Edo thought Gia should thank Takto for being generous with them. Gia pleaded with Takto, telling him that there were hungry children and elders among them who hadn't eaten either. He said they could become skin and bones, and he wanted to take some of the apples for the rest of his people, wishing to offer them instead of eating alone. This made Takto sympathetic, and he offered Gia a lot of different food, which amazed Gia. He told himself that they were the elves who fled the light, which is why they are called dark elves, and that they live thanks to the light elves, forced to live in darkness away from the light. No one had ever extended a helping hand to them, but Takto offered them food and told them it was theirs now. The elf soldiers thanked Takto, and Gia asked for the king's name, but he didn't answer. Then we moved to where the rest of the dark elves were, where a very sick lady was. Her daughter told her that Gia, their chief, would come with food now. She was very sad for her mother. When they smelled food nearby, it caught everyone's attention. Then Gia appeared and told them he had brought a lot of food and asked them to get ready to prepare it. The young and old were fed and became very happy. One of the elves asked Gia where he got this food. He told her he found it somewhere, and Takto remembered that memory. Then the elves went to sleep while Gia stayed awake alone. Then the elder Moltar came to him, and Moltar told Gia that the food he brought was amazing, and he had never seen anything like it in his life. Gia had the same opinion because he tasted the food. Moltar asked Gia what happened. Gia told him he encountered mythical creatures deep in the forest. Moltar asked what kind of myths. Gia wondered if Emily had told him anything about a being that was sealed in the cursed lands. Moltar inquired if he had met the King of Ruin. He told him about some legends and ancient books, that when the world reaches saturation, the King of Ruin will appear, bringing chaos to everything and forcing people to start life anew. But he didn't know how true these stories were, but he realized they couldn't be lies. Gia asked Moltar if he was describing himself as this, but Takto didn't introduce himself to him, but he was terrifying enough to earn the title of King of Ruin. Moltar asked if he talked to this king, but Gia told him it was beyond their understanding, but there was a young woman serving him. She explained some of the king's words to them, but Moltar didn't think this was the King of Ruin, but he also wasn't a benevolent being at all. After his stomach was full and he regained some of his magical energy, it became clear to him that this forest was unnatural, and he should have paid attention to that. Moltar asked Gia if he had offered anything in return for the food to the king. When Moltar learned that Gia had offered nothing, he didn't feel comfortable. Moltar criticized Gia, saying it was not normal for an evil being to give gifts for free, but all Gia did was explain what they had been through when asked. Moltar wondered why someone like the King of Ruin would do this. Gia guessed he did it out of mercy and sympathy for their situation. The king overwhelmed them with his generosity, which angered Moltar because he had bowed to him and become his follower. But Gia denied it, and Moltar asked him why he knelt to him. He told him that this expression shows respect. But Gia felt that the king had helped them and offered them aid when they were starving. Moltar expressed his doubts, considering him an evil being, but Gia had no other choice, and they believed they could argue now because their stomachs were full, and the king had provided them with food that satisfied their hunger. Then Gia felt let down and asked him what he should have done, but Moltar had no answer for him and apologized for it, affirming that he had done everything he could. Moltar, as the leader of the Dark Elves, would now negotiate with the king, and he had lived for over 2 centuries. It was natural for him to find a solution to this, and he was waiting for the day he would live in peace. So he asked Gia when that day would come. Then we moved to Takto, where Atto asked him to sit up straight. She asked him how he could spend such rare magical energy on something like this, but Takto felt pity for them, which angered Atto, because they had already started establishing Mainogura and were still ignorant of what surrounded them. He apologized to Ado for using magical energy without her knowledge, and promised that next time he would ask her before doing this, and asked her not to be angry, but she denied being angry. Then Takto told her he would grant any request she made, which surprised Atto, and she saw no need to make such a promise. Takto told Atto that he needed her, and he apologized for opposing her wise decision. He asked her to issue orders as she wished. However, Atto told him that he couldn't speak with the elves smoothly. While he spoke with her very easily, words failed to come out when he stood before others. Atto thought he was playing the role of a strict leader who disdains long speeches and leaves detailed negotiations to his followers. Takto realized he was bad at communication and cried, which saddened Ado greatly, and she asked him to stop crying. Moltar suggested that revealing the food to the elves would bring ruin and make everyone start over. He asked Gia if he was ready to meet this king again, unsure of what they would ask in return for the charity they had given them. However, Gia was confident that he hadn't spoken about such things. Still, Moltar asked Gia if he was certain about something like that, reminding him that it's common for an evil being to demand compensation. But it was also true that they needed to borrow the king's power to survive. Gia believed that even if they left the forest, they would return to a life of homelessness and struggle to find food, which would lead to their end. Moltar thought they had come here to live in a world free from oppression, but this might be their last chance. He urged them to go see the king because the future of their people depended on it. They were being watched by the insect belonging to Taktu, and then we shift to Taktu's place. The insect flew to them to deliver news, but Atu was in conversation with Taktu for a while. Taktu ordered the insect to relay the message to them, and once the insect informed Taktu of the situation, he understood that the elves were on their way to him. Atu thought they were coming because of the food he had given them yesterday, and that it should not be given all at once. However, Taktu anticipated that the presence of people with different ideas and cultures could lead to conflicts, and he wanted to take the rest of the food and leave immediately. Atu asked Taktu if he was worried about anything. Taktu was concerned that he didn't want to negotiate or communicate, which is why he wasn't good at negotiations. Then Atu offered to handle the negotiations for him, which would make Taktu appear as a beloved king. Taktu was grateful for this and asked her if she was sure about it. Atu pledged her loyalty and offered her service if he ever needed anything, thinking that he saw her as unqualified for this task. But that wasn't the issue for Taktu. He relied heavily on her, which made Atu happy. Then Moltari and Gia approached Taktu, starting to thank him for the food. Moltar introduced himself to Taktu, and Atu noticed that Moltar showed respect as he should have. She then asked him what he wanted to say. Moltar asked Taktu's name to get to know him better, which annoyed Atu, but Taktu agreed and told them he was the Lord of the World, the ruler of ruin, Ira Taktu. Atu warned him to always refer to him as King Taktu, which greatly surprised Moltare. Then Atu introduced herself, stating that she was of lower rank than King Taktu, but that they should be careful to show her respect while speaking with her. Moltar then promised them that he would inscribe their names into the souls of their people. Taktu felt relieved that things were going well. Atu allowed them to take the food and leave since most of the food wouldn't last long anyway, which surprised Gia and Moltar. But Moltar asked how they could repay Prince Taktu. Atu thought that wasn't necessary and doubted that they could do anything like that or offer something that would please the king, since they also lacked the necessary resources. Moltar was about to speak, but Atu didn't give him a chance. She thought this was a hesitant situation and asked them if they planned to do something. Moltar denied it, but Taktu sensed that things were moving in a particular direction and asked Atu to discuss the negotiations, whispering to her everything he wanted. This angered Atu because they were terrible at negotiating, and she felt that she shouldn't leave them like this and let them waste this opportunity. However, Taktu was confident that they wanted to build a mutually beneficial relationship, which surprised Atu, but Taktu suggested accepting a price that would be satisfactory for them rather than offering help with nothing in return, which would make them feel more secure. Then Atu told the elves that Taktu was determined to accept their offer in exchange for the kindness he had previously shown them. Moltar informed him that they were grateful to him, and Taktu sensed that Moltar was worried about a trick since they sided with evil. Atu understood that the elves viewed the king as a creature of darkness, but the elves denied this. Then Atu began to ponder what the counter-offer would be, and turned to Taktu because she didn't know what to do. He asked her to tell them about the outside world in the forest, and Moltar agreed, saying he would show them everything he had seen and heard. Then Atu asked them to leave the forest and respect their oath, which caused Gia to shudder upon hearing this. Taktu anticipated Gia's reactions would be much easier than Moltare's. However, Moltar told them that what would make them happiest was staying in the forest beside the king. But Atu informed them that this was forbidden, especially if they wanted to protect the souls of the rest of their clan. She advised them not to mention what had happened now to anyone else, which angered Gia, but Moltar asked him to calm down and follow the king's instructions. Then Moltar thanked Taktu for allowing them to visit him, and they left. Taktu wondered if he was doing the right thing or if he had ostracized them like this. He sensed there was a big opportunity to eliminate them somewhere else, and something needed to be done to turn this situation around. Then he asked them to wait and inquired why they shouldn't become his followers, which surprised them. Atu was shocked and asked them to let her consult the king a little before she approached him angrily, asking him what he was trying to do. Taktu told her he had considered using a refugee system and that the elves were neither inherently good nor evil. If he accepted them as refugees, assuming things unfolded as they did in the game, they should be evil beings like him. But Atu saw that groups of evil beings could coexist, even though they were quite different from the main citizens of Mainogura, who were half-humans. There was still a risk of conflict between them. Taktu anticipated risks indeed, but he asked her to remember how half-humans appeared and if she could bear living with them as citizens. Atu confirmed that it would be difficult to have a normal conversation with these half-humans because of how unpleasant they looked. Therefore, Taktu thought they were compatible and that she would help him a lot if the information reached them. Then Atu informed them that Taktu intended to establish a nation here soon and asked them if they wanted to be its citizens, promising to provide protection for them. Moltaire asked what would happen to them if they became his followers. Atu promised them eternal happiness and then told them they would be considered evil beings, giving them the freedom to choose their fate. She informed them that things would be more enjoyable with them if they wanted her opinion. Then, they moved to walk and explore the forest, and Ato asked Takto to pay attention to his steps. But Takto was fine, and Ato told him that it would take the elves some time to make their 1000th decision to become their followers. Takto thought that anyone else would think about it a lot before turning them into human beings, but Ato told them that they knew from the beginning what the best option for them would be. She told him that their camp was there, that she could see it. When he approached the elves' location, Moltar asked them to kneel before him. When one of the elves looked at him, he lost his promise, and Gia asked that no one look at him directly until Takto sat on the king's chair. Ato told Takto that all the elves were present and announced their acceptance as citizens in their new community, Mainogura. Ato asked Takto if he was sure of this. Takto told her that all the conditions had been met and asked her to officially announce the founding of Mainogura. Then Ato told them that they were now citizens of Mainogura and that their happiness and safety would now be guaranteed under King Takto's wing. But Gia asked himself, "Is this all there is?" They told them they would become evil, but he didn't feel any different. Then he felt the hatred rising within him for those who burned them, oppressed them, and harmed them. Emily also felt this, but Gia's anger increased. Takto approached him and asked him how he was doing. Gia then thought that this was the joy of being under someone's care. Then the elves greeted Takto, crying with joy. After that, Takto discovered that he was stuck because he would start in a bad location on the continent. He was very annoyed and showed the map to Ato, and he was very angry. He told her that there were 2 large nations in the village of Salva, one of which was the kingdom of Qualia. Ato told him that this people belonged to Arlos, which meant that he was a strong supporter of good. The kingdom of Alna, they are elves who love nature, and this is also a supporter of good. Takto thought that if they discovered their evil nation, Ato expected that this issue would be their death now. Takto thought that they did not have the military power to oppose these 2 great nations now. Both of them felt very annoyed. But Takto thought that not all the news was bad. Usually, Mainogura has difficulty producing research. Ato told him that their humanoid citizens were stupid in the end, but it was good that their fertility was high and their happiness did not decrease easily. Takto expected that the elves could cover this weakness. After Ato understood, she heard the elves coming to them to report on the outside world. Then Gia told Takto that he had brought Emily, his assistant, with him because she was a smart woman and had extensive knowledge of myths and other nations. He thought she would be useful to them. Then Ato told them that the king was pleased with their dedication to work and that they would be appointed to key positions to manage the kingdom of Mainogura. This was Takto's irreversible decision, and Moltar would take over the affairs of the state. Since he could use magic, great hopes would be placed on him. Moltar immediately accepted, and Gia would continue to work as a warrior leader and lead the forces of Mainogura. His duties would be to recruit soldiers. Gia accepted the position with pleasure, and they were ready to kill the enemies and make them lifeless corpses, which made Takto feel afraid because war is brutal. Ato told them that the king preferred peace, and asked him to always remember this, wondering why the King of Ruin would be so peaceful. Then Ato asked them to rest well until they recovered because they would be assigned to build housing. Then Moltar told them that he was very grateful, but he was more useful than Gia, who only cared about his strength, and that he had more experience, which annoyed Gia. Gia told the king that he was more energetic than Moltar and that he did not need rest at all, and that Emily would also work hard. But Ato saw that they were obsessed with work and asked Takto if she could ask them to collect resources at the present time, but Takto expected the idea of improving the terrain, and Ato told him that they also had the ability. Then she asked Moltar if they could collect wood, while preserving enough of the forest without harm. Moltar accepted this task because they are a people who live in the shelter of the forest, and if he intended to build buildings using large trees, he was certain that he would fulfill the king's desire. Ato was very optimistic about this, which surprised Gia again because the King of Ruin did not intend to destroy the forest. Then Takto wished them good luck and asked them not to forget to replant the forest again, which amazed the elves. Gia asked what was meant by replanting it. Edo was surprised that he did not know the meaning of replanting the forest. She asked Moltar and Emily, but they did not know. Then Takto discovered that the peoples of this world did not know how to build fortresses through magic technology. Then Otto asked Moltar if he was aware of the terms magic and the 6 main elements, but Moltar was aware of the 4 main elements and that it was a basic concept of magic. Emily had not heard that the term military magic had been used by any other nation. Here, Takto discovered that they were very behind in magic technology. Moltar thought that they were much poorer than their king thought, but Eto thought that they had a chance to overtake other nations once they advanced on them. Then she told them that reforestation is the practice of planting trees after they have been cut down in order to preserve the environment, and that it is an important step to ensure resources. But Emily did not think that any of their magic had anything to do with the growth of trees. Moltar expected that the trees would take a long time and be ready to be cut down, but Atto believed that reforestation is a technology that uses the 4 main elements to accelerate its growth, and this wisdom was born from the great king Takto, which surprised everyone. Takto thought it was a big lie, but Eto continued to tell them that the knowledge that comes from their king covers many different fields and asked them if they knew how lucky they were for this blessing. Emily thought that the apple she had received earlier was food created by the king. Edo confirmed this to her, but she preferred the grapes that the king created. But Emily also liked the grapes, and she found seeds in them and planted them, eagerly awaiting their growth, which amazed Atto and Takto. Atto asked her if she had really planted the grape seeds, and had they already sprouted. Then Takto asked himself why he hadn't thought of it before, and that the delicious food he created before was from the modern world. This meant that he could use emergency production to create things that did not exist in the game. Then he used emergency production and discovered that with this power he could create gunpowder, basic metals, and even oil. But this requires a great deal of magical energy. But this is extremely amazing, and he felt happy. But Emily was afraid that something bad would happen. But Atto told her that the matter was easy for them, and that she had done well, and Mainagura had obtained the 2nd national advantage. Then we moved to one of the 2 kingdoms in the continent. Its princess was playing the piano, and vowed to the cursed forest because the harbinger of the world was coming from there. Then the cardinal came to her and asked her to speed up the preparations because savages had appeared in the northern province. The queen agreed to set out because she should not ignore this. Then we moved to the elves, and they began to plant the seeds in the forest. The princess and the cardinal moved, accompanied by a group of guards. One of the guards had heard that the princess possessed special power, but he hadn't felt this from her at all. But the leader asked him to wait and see. As they were walking, a group of monsters appeared, heading towards them to kill them. The cardinal asked the princess to act, while the soldiers prepared for the monsters. But the princess cast her special spell, pointed her staff at the monsters, and burned them all. The cardinal was astonished by her power, saying she resembled a deadly weapon. But then something strange happened that surprised everyone. The princess possessed the power to completely repel evil and maintain a strong relationship with the kingdom of the elves. She buries her enemies in flames and bids them farewell with flowers. Therefore, she is one of the 7 great saints of the continent and is called Sualina, Lady of the Flourishing Burial. Sualina then asked the cardinal about the matter they had discussed on the way, but the cardinal didn't know what she meant. She reminded him that it was about the signs warning of the end of the world in the cursed lands and the necessity of sending holy knights to investigate. However, the cardinal strongly objected to this, saying it was about giving attention to the cursed lands in the distant dark continent to the south. He added that the leadership would not allow sending knights for this purpose. So, Sualina decided to go herself, but this decision made the cardinal extremely angry. He felt Sualina didn't realize her status to do something like this. He reminded her that she was no longer that simple village girl, but the cardinal told her he would send the soldiers who were under his direct command. When he left, he reprimanded her unheard. Then we moved to the forest, where Atu told everyone that it was now time to build, which made the elves happy. Then she moved with Takto to his council. Takto was happy, and Atu asked him the reason for his happiness. He felt happy that his throne was being built by the elves and that they did everything quickly, which is one of their characteristics. Atu also told him that they had begun building their own civilization, and it would be strong, dominating the earth and piercing the sky. Then Moltaro, Gia, and Emily also arrived to attend a meeting. But before this, Emily asked Takto to accept her gift. Takto immediately put on the clothes and was very happy because he finally got rid of his pajamas. Emily told him that they all worked hard so the outfit would suit him. Atu also liked the outfit and thought it suited Takto very much. Atu told the elves that Takto was extremely happy, which also made the elves happy. Then Atu told them that it was finally time to tackle internal affairs. But Takto was busy with the details of his throne and paid no attention to them at all. The elves were surprised by his behavior, but Atu tried to hide this behavior and told them that they would start the meeting while consulting Tacto whenever needed. Tacto was relying on them. Then Moltaro asked about the buildings they wanted to start constructing. Gia also made preparations like leveling the ground and cutting branches, but Atu thought they should start by building a food production facility, believing that no one would fight a war on an empty stomach, even though they weren't planning any wars. Moltaro then asked if Tacto could possibly produce infinite quantities with his power, but Atu thought that Moltaro was burdening Tacto too much with this task, and that they might face distribution problems as the land expanded. Moltaro thought Atu was right, and apologized for not planning well, but Atu had no problem with it, as he understood her intention. Then she presented them with something strange in a pot, which surprised them. Moltaro asked what it was. Atu explained that this was a meat tree, one of their food production facilities. It produces mysterious meat that tastes like human flesh and provides a large yield, but Tacto thought this looked evil. Moltaro understood this but objected because some might be upset by eating human flesh. But Atu asked them to plant it temporarily just as a start. It would also need a hut for its management and a building for food storage. Emily would take responsibility for this, and the tree asked Emily to take good care of it, which made Emily afraid. Then Atu told them that the second item was research, and since they were a small nation, they desperately needed to acquire the latest technology. Moltaro asked about which technology should be prioritized. Atu thought it was magic technology, of course, which excited Tacto. Atu told them this, and Moltaro was also excited since he was a magic researcher like Tacto. He asked Atu about the type of magic they would research. Atu confirmed to them that it was military magic because ordinary magic could only target a few tens of people. But military magic allows you to eliminate armies by the thousands and also allows changing the terrain to your advantage, alongside other strategic uses. This surprised them, and Moltaro asked if such magic even existed, but Atu asked him for some talented magic users to work on this research. Tacto expected that they would be able to develop it quickly because it wasn't overly complex technology. This made Moltaro feel excited about this magic. Then Atu moved to military planning. Gia felt excited because it was his turn, and he needed to organize an army, but Tacto interrupted him and asked him not to overfocus on this at the moment. This led to Gia's enthusiasm decreasing. Atu thought that armies don't produce anything, they just consume resources and magical energy, but Gia thought that their current fighting force had no power to protect the king, and Moltaro thought that worse than this was having bounties on their heads for being leaders of the Dark Elves. Atu realized that they were worried about someone chasing them, so Tacto suggested they produce a hero instead. Atu thought this was a great idea. A hero might have a high production cost, but they would barely require any maintenance, making them an ideal choice. Then Gia asked Atu about the type of hero. Atu told them that in Mainogura, there were several heroes serving under Tacto's command, and all of them were strong and possessed special abilities. There were several conditions that needed to be met to summon them, but they had to be able to summon one. At least, Tacto believed that armies needing permanent resources also drew attention. A hero could help them keep their secrecy, so Tacto decided to produce a hero, and then they could relax. This made Gaia grateful to Tacto, and Tacto found internal affairs management very enjoyable, which Atu also confirmed to him. Then he told them to collect magical energy from the citizens, and this amount would be related to the citizens' happiness. The happier the people were, the more the nation would develop, and thus Tacto would lead everyone to achieve happiness. Then we moved to the continent of Idaragia. One of the soldiers named Lunios wished to return safely from the Dark Continent. Then Verdel came to him and told him they had nothing for him to do, and that he had begged enough. Then he asked him about the necklace he was wearing, but Lunios immediately hid it. Verdel thought he was wearing this ring as an amulet, and also asked him for the names of his wife and daughter, but Lunios thought it was none of his business, but he told him, annoyed, that his wife's name was Marcia and his daughter's name was Mina. Then Verdel told Lunios that they would be traveling together for several days, and that he would feel bothered if he heard him repeat his wife's or daughter's name while sleeping. Then Lunios said to himself that Verdel was rude and ill-mannered, but he possessed many skills and achievements. Verdel wondered why they were sending him to the Dark Continent, but Lunios told him they were going to investigate the vision of Saint Swalina. If they succeeded, they would be appreciated by the Southern Provinces Conference, but if they failed, he, as an assisting Holy Knight, would be held responsible. But Verdel saw that these forces were too weak to investigate Swalina's vision, and that they were the only two holy ones, with the rest of the soldiers being mercenaries. But Lunios thought it was very rare to conduct an investigation outside national borders, so there were no standards for the size of forces deployed. Verdel wondered what the leaders were thinking, but Lunios found it difficult to know what the leaders were thinking because they were the ones who knew what was behind the scenes, and they must have had sufficient reasons to include Verdel with Lunios just before his journey. journey. Then they went out to the mercenaries, and one of the mercenaries told him they had been waiting for him for a long time. Verdel felt happy about the appointment of these mercenaries, and Lunios thought to himself that Verdel would increase their chances of survival in this battle. Then we moved to the forest, and Taktu was amazed by the constructions that had taken place. He had seen the beginnings of his civilization in the game evolving little by little many times, but now he saw it in reality, and it was a different matter for him. Then Emily told them that this was their building method, building houses on top of trees. She also told them that the meat tree was growing at a good pace, and they would soon finish the food warehouse. They had discovered a water spring near them to secure a permanent source, and this building was where King Taktu resided, and it was also the headquarters for the general administration to process paperwork. She thought that the Managora system should deserve a more imposing headquarters, but this was all they could do for now, and it was this size currently. And Taktu said to himself that this was a wise decision, and that she had completed tasks he hadn't even ordered, like securing a water source, which he greatly appreciated. But more important to him were these thousands of Dark Ones who were emaciated when he met them, but now they were full of life. He was the one who gave them that opportunity, but seeing them like this made him very happy. Emily asked Taktu for his opinion, and that they had fulfilled his wishes out of gratitude to him, and in return for the mercy he had shown them. Taktu told her they were amazing, and that he was happy because he had welcomed them as citizens, which made Emily cry tears of joy. Then Emily continued to guide Taktu and Atu on their tour. Taktu felt relieved that Emily had regained her composure, and that no girl had ever cried because of him before, which made him feel very confused. Then Emily told them that the meat trees were almost ready for harvest, and everything was going well because of the high-quality equipment Taktu had provided them. Taktu assured her that he would provide them with more tools for now, because he was worried that their quality would be low if they made them themselves. Atu saw that this would help them advance quickly, and that it was akin to cheating, but Taktu felt pleasure from using abilities that seemed like cheating to establish control, and Atu also felt happy about this. Then the tree told Emily that it felt it had ripened enough to be eaten, which made Emily scared. Atu guaranteed the necessary food production to sustain the inhabitants of Managora. Then Emily asked them to accompany her now to the water source. While they were on their way, Emily felt something strange in the forest. Then she was surprised by the appearance of the spring they had found. Then Gaia and Malter came to them and welcomed Taktu. They had come to build a water channel after Emily told them, but Emily thought the water was no longer usable. Malter asked to take a look, but Atu assured them it was fine and drank from it, which surprised them. Then Atu told them that this area was called the Cursed Domain, and this was proof that this land had become part of Managora's territory. Then Taktu asked them to take a deep breath, and when they did, Malter felt his mind become clear. Gaia felt power flowing through his body, and Emily felt extremely refreshed. Then Atu revealed to them that they had become inhabitants of Managora, and that they had now transformed from neutrals to villains, and were granted the benefits of the Cursed Domain. Malter asked about Atu's meaning. Did she mean that this wasn't a safe environment, but also provided them with a more comfortable living environment? Then Gaia drank the water and saw that he could drink it normally. Taktu told them that the Cursed Domain was very suitable for defense, and soon all their lands would transform into this form. Atu assured them that all of this was the fruit of Taktu's power. Malter expected this from a great king like him, but there was one problem. It clearly drew attention. However, Malter suggested providing strict surveillance on the surrounding area for now, but if the entire area became like this, it would be easy for their enemies to discover them. Gaia suggested they should form an army, but Atu wanted to reassure them because the king would produce a hero, so there was no need to worry. But Malter didn't understand what a hero meant, even after Atu had explained it to them before. But Atu thought it was better for them to see with their own eyes, and several days had passed since their arrival here, which was enough time for this. Then Atu showed her power, which surprised the thousands, and she told them that she was also a hero, and what they had seen was only a small part of what she could do. She explained to them that those called heroes possessed power that allowed them to wipe out entire armies. Taktu explained to them that the hero's power was extraordinary and didn't attract attention, and they continued to gain power over time even without doing anything, which amazed them. Gaia asked if Atu would become even stronger than this over time. Atu told them that since they planned to stay in isolation, her power was sufficient for their current needs. But Taktu told Atu that she didn't have to destroy the forest to show off her power, and he told her they would discuss this matter later, but asked her to make sure to clean up the forest. This made Gaia feel extremely excited, and he would also help Taktu. Malter acknowledged Taktu's power for the second time, and Atu's power too. He thought he should build a castle befitting Taktu, but Taktu felt comfortable in his home, which resembled others' houses. However, Malter felt this was not befitting of him, and Gaia rejected the idea of their king living in a house like other houses. Emily would feel guilty because of this. Malter thought he would be rude if he objected to Taktu's opinion, but he asked him to reconsider. Then Atu told Taktu that the cost of building the castle might be high, but it would produce resources and seem to increase the citizens' happiness, which led to Taktu's approval for its construction, and also the happiness of the thousands since he agreed. Taktu desired to obtain the floating castle one day, so it would be good to start early. Atu saw that it was the national legacy that could be built when the city reached its maximum level, and it was indeed everyone's dream. She thought the floating castle was a city floating in the sky, but this matter surpassed the imagination of the thousands. It was hard to imagine. But Emily saw that Taktu had fulfilled everything he promised them, and this meant that the floating city was not fitting for him. Then the thousands thanked Taktu and renewed their pledge to King Taktu, wishing for the increased prosperity of Managora forever, which made Taktu happy, and the process of establishing the nation was going wonderfully, and he asked them to continue this way. Then we moved to the Holy Knights. They eliminated a group of monsters that blocked their path. One of the mercenaries thought there was no need for their intervention in the first place, but Verdel expected this was just the beginning. Lunio said to himself, wishing their progress would continue at this pace in the Dark Continent. Verdil and Lunius continued on their way to the mission site, and Verdil was impressed by Lunius's intelligence when he decided to hire a mercenary squad. But Lunius humbly responded, telling him that luck had been on his side in this matter. He also told him that most mercenaries are currently in the north. Verdil was troubled by the northern disturbances, so Lunius explained to him about the sudden appearance of barbarians in the northern province of the Holy Kingdom of Qualia. They raided villages, causing severe damage. The Saint and the army were sent to contain the situation, but the disturbances continue without any signs of calming down. However, Bargo, one of the mercenaries, heard that the north is facing many problems. Lunius asked Bargo not to talk about the matter as if it didn't concern him, but basically the matter really didn't concern Bargo. Verdil asked Bargo if they had no desire to go there, telling them they could make a lot of money. But Bargo knew the matter would be rewarding for him and his team, but he didn't go there after hearing about the presence of a sorceress, preferring to stay away. But Verdil told them that no one cares about the north, and that they're heading south to the cursed lands. He asked them to be fully prepared because they don't know what they'll face. But Vargo knows Lunius well and trusts him. Then they moved to the tavern, and Lunius asked Bargo about this sorceress. But Bargo told them not to worry, that these are just rumors. He told him that people say the northern disturbances are caused by her. But Lunius thought this was very ridiculous, and that he sent the saint to the north too. It can't be that everything that happened was the work of just one person. Bargo also thought this was impossible and believed they might be a group of heretics or something similar. But Verdil interrupted Bargo's words and asked him to stop the gloomy talk. Then Verdil drank his glass and asked for more from the waitress. Vargo asked Verdil if he had drunk too much, but Verdil asked him to stop scrutinizing him. He said he read a phrase that says, "After caring for people's suffering, in your home and in front of your family, remove your cloak." In other words, after good work, you should relax and unwind. But Lunius clarified that this phrase is from Arlus's Book of Doctrine, the third clause of the third article of the fourth paragraph. They learned from that article that they should get temporary rest from their sacred duties among their family, and it shouldn't be understood as permission to drink. He then drank, but Verdil thought this was just a difference in interpretation, and asked Lunius if he wanted to get into a logical argument. Then the waitress brought the drink to Verdil, who was waiting for it and was very happy to receive it. This led to Vargo mocking them, because he thought he had two holy knights, who spare no effort to investigate something from the cursed lands of the Dark Continent. He wondered what could be so important. Lunius said it's not about a sorceress like in the north, right? But Verdil asked Bargo not to worry, and that it's not like that. They have an idea of what it might actually be. Bargo asked what it was. Verdil explained that it's the place where the Dark Elves fled to, and their leaders are probably worried about them potentially causing problems. Bargo understood and thought they can't leave them alone since they're skilled in assassinations and curses after all. Lunius believed that if they could gain power while hiding, they would eventually turn their swords toward them. But Verdil asked Lunius to calm down because they're only going to investigate the matter. Bargo was happy when he learned about the plan and felt reassured. Then Lunius asked Verdil if he was sure this is the spirit they should have as holy soldiers, that they should risk their lives to eliminate evil. But Verdil got angry at Lunius and asked him not to let glory blind his sight, because there will come a time when this will be necessary for them as holy knights. But this isn't something for you to decide easily like this, because he has a family, and this applies to all of them. They have good reason not to die. Then he joked with him again, telling him he should have stopped drinking and that he's now just an arrogant old man sipping wine and preaching. Then Verdil stood on the table and told told all the soldiers they're going to the Dark Continent tomorrow, and he allowed them to drink as much as they want today. Then we moved to Takuto with all his followers. Takuto was standing in front of a flesh tree fruit. Emily asked Gaia if something would happen now, but Gaia had no knowledge of what would happen. But he knows that Takuto gathered them today and thought it was something concerning the kingdom. Then Mualtar asked them to stop talking because it had begun. Then Takuto cast his spell on the fruits, transforming them into long-legged insects, amazing everyone. Mualtar asked Takuto if he could create new life. Atua told them proudly that this is the power of great Takuto, and he still possesses many powers. Your loyalty and happiness will give Takuto much greater power. She asked them to show their love for the king greatly, leading the elves to cheer for Takuto loudly. Then Takuto moved to his throne and was happy that things went well. Atua encouraged him on this and was happy that they used normal production safely. Takuto confirmed this was good, but he felt more comfortable when they retreated when he smiled to ignore their question, but he wonders what this means. But Atua didn't think it would be easy to gather resources and add magical energy to them, and then everything was done. But she thought that thinking about things they don't understand won't help. But what's important now is that thanks to the recent ritual, they were able to confirm they can safely produce new units. Takuto thought the next step would be conducting a hero summoning. Atua thought they need to gather a lot of magical energy currently, and they now have a clear path. But Takuto thought the clear path has two heroes beside him, who will ensure the combat power they need. Atua asked Takuto when he intends to summon first, but Takuto thought he would start with the insect queen Isla, which made Atua happy because Isla has power. Takuto confirmed that the insect queen is one of Mainogura's strongest heroes and has an insect form. She has the ability to enhance all insects, making long-legged insects first-class fighters. However, Isla can produce larva units to be their workforce. Isla enhances performance whether in war or internal affairs, so she's the hero they need right now. Atua was very impressed with Takuto's suggestion because they desperately need Isla. Summoning her early to reproduce and increase the workforce and get more power is a classic strategy. When facing many unknown elements, it's wise to follow strategies that can be trusted more. Takuto confirmed this, adding that the rest have terrible personalities, so they had no choice but Isla. Then Atua remembered that one of them likes conquering the world, and another loves drowning it in chaos, and all their heroes have problems. But Takuto wanted to focus on internal affairs now, and the idea of summoning them now isn't right. But he can't do without their abilities and wants to meet them personally, so he intends to summon them eventually. He hopes they won't cause problems because he wants to live in peace. Then let's go to Verdel and Lonius's army. A huge monster appeared to them. Lonius thought they were very rude for attacking them during the day, but he expected this from the Dark Continent. Argo asked Lonius to help them and tell them what to do. Then Lonius asked them to draw their bows, but Verdel decided he'd handle it himself because they didn't have time to waste since they were late. Verdel then walked towards the monster, drew his sword, and told his army not to do anything. Then Verdel used the Holy Sword art spell. Lonius discovered this was Qualia's secret technique to gain power. The monster then aimed a blow at Verdel, but Verdel managed to cleave the monster's staff, which surprised the monster. Verdel then dealt several blows to the monster and finished it off with a final powerful strike. Lonius saw that this was equal to the power of a small dragon, and the hill giant wouldn't stand a chance. The monster then fell to the ground. Verdel returned to his army's ranks. Lonius was very impressed with Verdel's performance and thought they wouldn't face any problems in their mission now with power like his. Then we moved to Takto's land. He was eating. Atu asked Takto why he didn't eat better quality food, but Takto couldn't eat that. Atu then advised Takto that he should eat healthier meals, but Takto got sick of this and started eating, saying he'd eaten plenty of it in the hospital. Then he told Atu he was worried about her. Atu wondered why he was worried about her, but he was worried because she only ate salad. Yet, that suited Atu very well. Takto was surprised and told himself, her habits are very healthy, even though she's an evil person. Then he asked her, is this pace of things really happening? But Atu told him the elves were putting in a lot of effort to build the palace. Then Takto remembered something important and asked Atu to call Moltar and the others when they finished eating. Atu agreed to this, but asked Takto what he wanted to talk to them about. Takto wanted to explain to them how to deal with the long-legged insects, because with their help, he could see the area around the forest. Atu asked Takto if he meant the nearby city was the area around the forest. Takto confirmed to her that that city didn't belong to Qualia and wasn't affiliated with those benevolent lands either. Atu explained to him that Qualia was far from the north and was from different neutral lands in the east. They had to decide how to deal with it, and she thought they would be the first to discover their presence due to their proximity. But Takto felt happy because it had become neutral territory. If it had been allied with good, they wouldn't have been able to negotiate at all. But Atu expected that anyone else coming here would be a problem because they wouldn't come without a specific purpose. Takto saw that Atu was very worried and told her there were no signs of anyone knowing about their presence, so it was fine. but Atu suspected Takto's talk about this would stir up story events. But Takto thought this was impossible. None of it would happen. Then Takto felt something strange. Atu asked in surprise what happened. Takto told her he felt someone was already coming towards them. Then he explained to her that an armed squad was approaching the forest. He asked Atu that he wanted to avoid drawing attention right now. He also asked her to go and get rid of them in the most peaceful way possible. And if not, then a fight would happen. Atu agreed to this. Then we moved to Verdel's army. Lonius told them they had reached the cursed lands and the cursed sea of trees. Then Verdel asked them to move inwards, and after they moved, Verdel asked them to stop. Then a girl appeared, approaching them, but Verdel asked her to stop and asked about her appearance and what she was doing in this cursed land. Atu, the girl, then told them she was a dark elf who had escaped to the forest to survive, and that she knew Verdel was a holy knight from Qualia, and she asked them what brought them to this land. But Verdel refused to tell her why they came, and asked her to answer their questions. He asked her what she was doing in this land. The girl explained to him that she lived with her sisters who had suffered a similar fate, but Verdel didn't care if they chose to live in this cursed forest, and that it wasn't their business, but their matter concerned the forest, and they would enter it. He asked them if they objected to this, but Atu advised them not to do this and showed them her red eye. But Lonius got angry and told them they were holy knights and shouldn't be stopped. But Verdel asked him to shut up because he was the one talking now. Lonius apologized to Verdel, but he was angry and told himself that this didn't deserve all this scolding and that he had only intervened a little. Then Verdel explained to Atu that they had come to this land for a mission and couldn't just go back because she didn't want them to enter. But Atu explained to them that her sisters were scared and had suffered a lot from a long, painful journey until they found a safe place to live in peace. And she asked them to show them some mercy. But Verdel saw that she was insistent on this, and asked her if there was something in the forest. But the girl told him that only tranquility and peace resided in the forest. Then she asked them why they were interested in this gloomy forest. But Verdel got angry, and told her they came to investigate an important matter to prevent a disaster on the land, and they couldn't go back without confirming the truth. This greatly surprised the soldiers. Lonius told Verdel that he had revealed the mission's secret to her. But Verdel got angry at Lonius again and asked him to be quiet, saying he didn't care if it was a secret or not, and there were times when the truth had to be told. Then Lonius thought about the matter to himself, and believed this was a betrayal of trust from Verdel. Even if he was a holy knight, his authority also had limits. Then Lonius threatened Verdel that he would report what happened when they returned home, but Verdel didn't care. Then Atu discovered the secret and learned that the two holy knights were worried about a potential disaster, and Verdel confirmed to her that he insisted on entering the forest to confirm the truth. But the girl refused for the second time, which surprised Bargo and Lonius, even after she knew they were holy. Then her eyes turned red again, and she told them there was nothing on the land to worry about, and she asked them to understand this and go back where they came from. But Verdel still insisted on entering, saying they only needed a moment, and he asked her if that was possible, but Atu begged them to refrain from it. Then Lonius was surprised and wondered if this was evil energy, and if this Atu was really from the Dark Elves. This confirmed to him that there was something in this forest, and he had to discover it. Then Verdel asked the girl if there was any chance of a disaster hitting them or their people, but the girl denied this, saying that she was the one who feared something might happen to them, and she swore to him on this. Then Verdel ordered them to leave, which surprised Lonius, and he asked him what he was doing. Then Verdel told Lonius that they wanted to live in peace, so there was no problem with this. But Lonius could feel evil energy coming from Atu, and how could he trust someone like her? But Verdel trusted her, because trust was part of their creed. Lonius asked, what if she's deceiving them? But Verdel asked him not to let fear taint his views because he had little faith. And he told him there was no problem in this land, and this was the result of their investigation. Then he moved and asked the army to return home. But Lonius got angry and insulted Verdel, thinking Verdel had abandoned their mission and stripped him of his authority. Then Verdel stopped and asked him angrily, "Are you kidding me?" But Lonius thought Verdel was the one joking after revealing the secret mission to Atu and planning to return without an investigation, and that he couldn't entrust this mission to someone who would do that. Based on that, he would take command from now on, and he gave orders that they would enter the cursed lands and investigate, and they had to uncover the truth of this disaster. Bargo agreed to Lonius's orders, which angered Verdel. He asked Bargo to stop, but Bargo told him he wasn't under his command now, and that Lonius had appointed them. Then the girl asked them not to act rashly, and that they could still resolve the matter through dialogue. But Lonius asked Atu to be quiet, and that if she kept interfering, he would treat her without mercy, and he asked the soldiers to arrest her. But Verdel got angry and asked the soldiers not to touch an unarmed person at all. But the soldiers advanced towards Atu, and Atu believed the dialogue had failed. After that, Lonius woke up from his unconsciousness, and his hand was full of blood. He was surprised by the complete destruction of the soldiers' weapons, and he was shocked when he saw them hanging dead in the air. Verdel discovered that Atu was a wicked sorceress, which greatly scared Lonius. Then Atu told them that things were going well, but life isn't always something that goes well.